see what your game is.
No, well, she doesn't need to be, oh, you should
Great.
be
So
here for this.
we're going to start with our workshop, the top of the hour here until 7:30, at which point we'll start our regular meeting, where we have one regular agenda item, and then shortly thereafter we have one architectural review, certificate of appropriateness. So with that, John Clark will outline for us. You may remember, board, we received a notice from the municipality of Fishkill around the self-storage along 52, I believe, right?
No, that's on,
9D.
19,
Yeah,
sorry.
9D.
Highway, yeah.
Right. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means in terms of our workflow and where we fall in the process in terms of not immediately, but ultimately sharing
Yeah.
our observations back.
I'm prepared to talk about Fishkill Avenue. I think Jennifer has more information about the,
We're, okay, all right.
yeah,
Basically, Fishkill is pause deck that, so eventually we'll get more information on that as it's forthcoming.
they're going to put a storage unit right south of 84 on the east side of 9D, right before you get to the intersection, which is just outside the city. And there's issues. I think it's wet in the back. There's traffic in and out problems. You know, how do you get a driveway and turn left there and all that sort of thing. So I guess Fishkill paused decked it. I was surprised at that. But that's all I know.
Okay. So what were we going to share for workshop tonight?
The city council has been thinking about the idea of rezoning Fishkill Avenue corridor.
Sorry, I conflated the two. Thank you.
Yes. And nothing's set in stone at this point, but there's a few things that are going on that sort of precipitated this idea that maybe we should think about the rezoning of that stretch of the road. One is that one of the major car dealers is apparently moving out, which is going to free up a lot of land, and there's been people who have been coming into the building department with conceptual ideas, and right now, under the zoning, there's no specific, other than the bulk tables, there's no specific guidelines as to what can and can't go there. So it just has an open end of uses and setbacks and height restrictions, and that's about it. So they were a little worried that that much land would come up and people could come in with who knows what. And the second thing, and this is sort of, I think, a big deal for the city, is that the MTA right-of-way that goes all along the creek there and right along the back edge of those businesses is now being proposed for a rail trail, which would connect all the way to Hopewell Junction, up to the walkway over the Hudson, down, it would be a major interconnection of the Greenway Trail system coming up from the south and to the center of the county and up north and to the south as well. So it's a major bike and pedestrian facility that will be right through there, and that could change the character of that area, or at least what the city has in mind for that area. So they asked me to take a look at it and come up with some design guidelines and some new sort of dimensional standards and whatever. So I've done that, and I presented it to the council. They were favorably disposed. They made some suggestions, some changes, and they said we'd be interested in getting some initial feedback from the planning board before we put anything into a local law and send it to the public. So I'm here to get your initial reactions and comments. So this is the area as it stands now. It's sort of a mixture of light industrial to the south going down as far as the old Talax plant. Heavy industrial, that's the right-of-way of MTA, so that's essentially unbuildable, but it runs all the way through there and has a pretty wide corridor. And then up north, there's a general business district, and that's where all the car dealers are and the gas station and the car wash and things like that.
So just so I'm oriented, the LI right below Memorial Park, that's Talix?
Yes.
Yep, and then going north,
It goes up to that car wash, and then it turns into the heavy industrial. You can see the picture to the right is that section in between where you can, from 52, look down at the railroad tracks and the creek. So it's,
Yeah.
you know, there's a very scenic corridor along there that's been sort of hidden by all those car dealers forever.
That's the lower picture is as you're heading toward those car dealers, yeah.
Yes, and then the upper picture is what the car dealers look like now,
Yeah.
which is relatively empty, or at least some of them are, not all of them. So there's a lot of land there that has been not that attractive for years.
Yeah.
You know, they have cars that go right up to the street, limited sidewalks.
That's what I've always considered.
No street
Beacon's
trees.
back door,
Yeah, lots of overhead wires, you know.
yeah.
So,
Sorry, was that FCO, Flood Control District?
say again?
Fishkill Creek.
FCD is the.
FCD, okay,
Yeah,
I'm not
Fishkill
reading.
Creek Development District.
Got it.
So, I mean, coming at this from the aspect of there's an interest in keeping things simple, why not just extend the GB zoning district over this area? I mean, is it, this FA standard is with only a couple small exceptions, basically the same as
It's primarily, they wanted to have design guidelines. And there are other GB districts in the city. So if they just extended that, then the design guidelines would extend to all those districts, and they wanted to just focus on this area.
So is it currently GB?
This area up here to the north is GB, where all the car dealers are.
And that's part of this area?
Yes, let me show you what they're considering. This is what they're considering as the FA, the Fishkill Avenue District. So it will extend all the way up to Chemprine or Chemprine, I'm not sure how you say that. Chemprine, yes.
so that, well,
Say again? Yeah.
It's like a chemical shampoo.
Yes.
Green.
And all the way down to the Talix northern property line. And include those 3 existing districts, plus a little bit of the residential over here where that church is on the other side of the street.
I think we should get some additional design standards, because I want to remind the board when we were reviewing the proposed apartment building that's going to be constructed at the corner of 52, what is it? What's the side street there?
Conklin.
Conklin, thank you, yeah. And I can't remember who made the comment, but someone made the comment that you get a building here with nice materials and nice design, and you're gonna start creating a bit of a gateway impression of people coming into the city, giving them an idea of what they can expect ahead. And so if this area becomes something other than car dealerships, if there is some mixed use and some residential development, I think we should try to, perhaps focus some design standards, and maybe there are things that maybe there are some things that can even be increased beyond what they are. If there's the potential for a rail trail, a significant rail trail connection, the presence of the Fishkill Creek, and this is an example, I'm not even, I'm just kind of pulling this out of the air, but maybe even some of the minimum criteria, like must have 15%, plantings and vegetation. Do we want to up any of those things?
It
That's
could.
sort of enhance
That's all in play.
that sort of, natural corridor that this is going to be, part of. And so that's just an example of pulling something out of the air. But if there's an opportunity to create something special with some of the recreational resources and natural features around it, maybe you want a little bit more than what we've had.
Yeah, the comments that have come in from the council members so far are they like the idea of having residential mixed use, commercial mixed use on the site. I think they were impressed by the building that was approved on Conklin Street, and that would set a model for how things might look. But at the same time, they were also concerned that this is the area traditionally that gas stations and car washes, and there used to be a grocery store out there, that bigger footplate sorts of businesses and things that are essential to the city but allowed nowhere else. There's no place that you can put a gas station on Main Street or in the Fishkill Creek Development District or in the Linkage District or the Waterfront Development. This is the area where you can put a gas station for the city.
There's 2 there. There's one at the, at the split where the road goes to Glenham.
Yeah, that's in the town, but yeah.
One across from what will hopefully be the new Romanova.
That town's in there.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for maintaining some of those convenient services.
Yes.
Right? So, yeah.
So they asked me to try to come up with some sort of hybrid district. I used the linkage district design standards pretty much, made some minor tweaks. But I also allowed for things like a drive-through window or a gas station that would be allowed here as long as it was, say, the pumps were behind the convenience store rather than in front of it. The parking has to be to the rear. Drive-through windows have to be to the side or rear, not to the front.
So-
Landscaping in front, street trees, sidewalks. So it's sort of they wanted to have something there that still allowed for some auto-oriented uses, but made it capable of having a building like this and blend it all in. And I think there was agreement that a good grocery store would be a good thing for that
I
area.
was just gonna say that we really need another grocery store
Yes.
that can afford to shop.
Exactly. So they wanted to make sure that whatever we did didn't preclude a grocery store or a gas station or a car wash or things like that. It just would up the design standards so that those things would blend into other sorts of buildings, so that it wasn't all car washes and car dealers and auto-oriented uses. There would be a mix.
Is the drive-up consideration around potential fast or potential chain restaurant types of uses?
Possibly. We did put some things in there that would make a standard chain restaurant less likely to come.
Bulk?
Parking in the rear,
Yeah.
they don't like that. The big one is we put a minimum two-story, and it has to be occupiable, second story, not just a fake facade.
Yeah, that's a deterrent.
So gas stations and fast food joints are going to be challenged by that, but they can do it. There's no reason you can't put a second story on a
Storage. But they'd
a
have to
chain
be-
restaurant.
They'd have to be occupiable, though.
Yes.
Is what you're saying. They couldn't just be
They
storage.
don't have to be occupied, but they have to be occupiable.
Technicality.
The way it's written now, I mean, that's all, everything's in a first draft sort of situation. I've already had comments from the CAC and from the council members, so I've made some changes. You can look at them tonight if you had time. But they want something to allow a building like this or promote a building like this, but still allow a grocery store if it wanted to come in or something else. It would have to be two-story along the frontage, but not necessarily the back, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Is there consideration for support services like sort of medical oriented, like
Yeah.
clinics or?
Offices would be perfectly fine out here.
Yeah.
Hospitals are illegal, and strip clubs. You need, those are the two uses, for some reason, I don't know the connection between them, that are explicitly prohibited, right?
Adult uses are allowed in light industrial districts, and that's it.
No, but in this district, I'm just saying that,
Yeah, they're not allowed in this district.
right? And hospitals.
Yeah, I don't think the
Why? I mean, I don't know what that's a specific question I had. It's like, that seems like one of the things that the city would most want.
yes.
Right? And the thing that no one has asked for is the thing that no one's questioning, which is the amount of residential density that's just being assumed by everyone,
Well, no, you can have hospitals in the city, you just can't have them in this district.
There's a lot of limitations. What I'm saying is there are only a few locations that a healthcare facility could physically locate in the city right now, and they need parking, they need a lot of other things that are provided in some of the larger lots here. And I just think it's short-sighted to prohibit that.
But certainly, like an urgent care or medical offices, that sort of thing, could certainly go in the GB district. A hospital needs a lot of land, and these are very narrow lots. They can't really
We have
handle.
regional hospitals. We have several hospitals around it. We're not going to build a hospital, but there are healthcare, there are.
Yeah, but
intensive-
healthcare facilities can go here.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that. Okay. Yeah, I mean, That makes sense to me.
No, it's,
I mean, I don't know, are you advocating for looking, at least
I'm just saying
commenting to
there's-
the city that they should,
So you think that, Kevin's concerned that there's a prohibition on healthcare offices or like an urgent care?
No, just hospitals and, as far as I remember. I'll bring up the,
it seems like anything is doing a procedure, and it's procedural. It seems pretty broad.
I'll show you the tables in a second, and we can look at it.
the use tables?
I wanted to talk about the map first. One of the constraints of this area is the lots are relatively shallow. And so in order to put in a building like Conklin, you really sort of need about 150 feet depth, and none of this area has 150 feet depth. On the east side, it's 138 on average, and on the west side, it's 90, which is pretty tight. If you're going to put rear yard parking lots, there's just not enough room for them. So that's always a constraint. You're going to end up with a lot of side yard parking rather than rear yard parking. I did want to ask, when I was looking at the maps today, there's 3 areas where this is all residentially zoned but commercially used. So these lots are coming available across from the new building on Conklin or the proposed building on Conklin.
That's Lanks,
What's that?
the automotive place.
Yeah. That goes all the way up to Mead Avenue here. And the gas station goes all the way up to Mead, that property, and there's a vacant parcel up here next to the dollar store or whatever that is. So the business district could expand into that area. It would pinch those houses in the back, perhaps. But there's hills coming down where they're actually easier to access from the front than they are from the back, from the residential street. So
So you're suggesting those 3 red dotted areas, including in the FA?
I'm suggesting
potentially?
they'd be thought about.
Yeah.
I think in particular where the gas station is, the 2 corner lots, this one and this one makes some sense to me because of the way the slopes come off that
Yeah.
residential street. They're probably never going to be residential, and they could be used for like rear yard parking for a building up front.
Yeah, it's akin to that new development you just showed, yeah.
Yes,
Very
exactly.
similar to that.
See, that has like 100 and 200 feet depth, so it was easy to put a building in front with
Yeah.
a double bay parking in the back.
Yeah, I
This is
agree.
going to
It's
be
not like-
very hard in this area to do that.
I don't envision somebody building a single-family house on a corner like that.
No,
Yeah.
but I could see a small apartment building
Sure.
with a store on the first floor. Like the Conklin Street building. That was 12 units.
How long has the zoning in the HI area that we're talking about been HI?
As far as back as I can remember, but I'm not that old here.
70, it would have been before the last update. So the first update was the first update was to the comprehensive plan that hadn't been touched since 1970. So
Yeah, but there's a lot of rezoning had been done. I'm not sure.
I have a copy of that map. I can dig it out.
Yeah. So there was discussion about should it extend all the way up to the town line, on the north end. I took it up to the front yard of Kempreen because it starts getting very steep after that.
You're
And
splitting
hard to
that
build
lot?
on that front part of the lot
Do you think
anyway.
it's wise to split that lot?
What's that?
Do you think it's wise to split that lot between 2 different?
My first recommendation was no, but the council was very interested in that front yard being included in it because it's so buildable.
Has anybody suggested, and I think this would be a good idea, analyzing the residential build-out capacity and finding out how many units this potential rezoning is going to
Yes, we did that.
Yeah, and also how much commercial tax income and jobs and other beneficial business activity is going to be removed by doing this. Because this is, during the comprehensive plan, I just want to, a couple things I want to say, preface, is that during the comprehensive plan, this area was one of the places that generated a lot of the income that the city had before Main Street was built up. And there really was a conscious effort to create and maintain a diverse economy in Beacon, where it wasn't just a residential community, right? Where there were jobs, there were industrial zoning, there was light industrial zoning, there were commercial areas, there was a wide diversity. And I think we have to be really careful that we're not removing one of the areas where a certain segment of business use can occur, right? Entirely, because the highest value for any of these, if there's residential allowed in these areas, the highest value, there's millions, maybe 3 million reasons why somebody's going to build residential in an area if they are given the choice of anything, right? So it's not an idea that they can do anything. It's the idea that there's a preponderance of the work is going to be residential, right? So I think that we need to be aware of that, take that into account when we're analyzing this, and we need to have hard data. We need, like a build-out analysis. We need test fits and some other things so that we can make a rational judgment as to how extensive this is, what its impact is in the city, and also I think that and people have prevaricated about this a little bit, I think, but I think it's a departure from the intent of the comprehensive plan. I think we have to take that very seriously.
There is conflict with a couple sentences in the comprehensive plan that would have to be amended in order for this, because the comprehensive plans essentially said, leave this area as it was. In terms of the assessed value, you'd actually gain money by doing this, not lose money.
Yeah,
Because mixed-use buildings always generate more money than strictly commercial buildings, because you get 3 layers. We would have commercial mandated on the first floor and residential above it, so you essentially triple the value of that, not exactly triple, but if you look at the Main Street
I wouldn't promise things.
if you look at the Main Street assessed values per acre, they're much higher than anything out on this strip.
Well, partly because of the hard work that we did democratically with a large amount of community input to improve those district changes, right? And so I want to make sure that this is done with a broad democratic effort.
Sure.
It made
That's
the
why we're
work
here.
that we did a lot
This is
better.
the start of the process.
Okay.
But I just wanted to assure you, at this point at least, the zoning is designed so that the ground floor has to be commercial. So you're not losing that commercial base. You're losing a car dealer, but you're gaining 5 or 6 extra stores on that, that area that used to be a car lot.
And as part of that, I want to also really encourage you to not sort of frame the choices that we have as that the uses and density and sort of are off the table. They've already been decided, and that we are only talking.
hang on, Kevin, just real quick. The city council has asked the city's planner to share some recommendations, and that's what he's done. And so, to be fair, as John mentioned, this is the start of the process. We're responding to the recommendations without what I would consider the presupposition that it's a fait accompli,
Yeah, no.
right? So I just want to state that. And yeah, what I'm hearing is that this FA is fait accompli. Yeah. It's a new district.
No.
But that,
And it'll
yes.
certainly go through a public process.
Yeah,
Public
exactly.
hearings. And this is just an initial first draft where the map has changed just from the first meeting, and I'm suggesting that maybe you think about other changes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. And it does then reflect an update to the comprehensive plan.
Yes,
therein.
we looked at the comprehensive plan, and I found 4 areas where 52 is talked about. 2 of them have what I would suggest you would want to change the language in it, because essentially it says leave it alone. And this is obviously not leaving it alone, but facts have changed, especially the rail trail element has changed. That's a big difference between an abandoned rail corridor and a recreational resource that has regional implications.
Yeah, and the leave it alone aspect back then probably had more to do with, we had a lot more to address.
Yes, the high
Then-
priorities were Central Main
Exactly.
Street and the waterfront, not this area.
I do think what Kevin said is an important point. I mean, to state the obvious, we're not married to or committed to thoughts that were in the comprehensive plan at points in the past. Now, that said, especially given that as things stand right now, this FA zoning district would just be applicable to the area we're looking at. And part of that is GD, where manufacturing wouldn't be allowed, but what if manufacturing and industrial use became either a permitted use or a permitted use or a special permit use?
Yes, actually, if you want to hang
So
on
you
for a
want to
second.
open a kayak
This
factory
is the
or whatever.
proposed use table changes, and at the first pass, we essentially left everything with the same as GB. So there'd be nothing that's taken away from GB. What has been added is as the last industrial or manufacturing use has been added to that district so that you would have the option. I mean, I've suggested be a special permit by the planning board,
I think that-
just in
that's
case it was some
logical.
sort of toxic sorts of, things that you wouldn't want mixed in with residential. But light-scale manufacturing or industrial-type uses would be allowed in the district, where it isn't allowed now.
So you could
just to
open your
give it-
kayak
make it
making
as
shop.
flexible as possible.
Yeah, I think that's logical. Forgive me, this is a little small to read, but and I should know this, but does general business by default include office?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it essentially includes all the commercial-type uses except for previously industrial manufacturing.
And no cabaret, right, Kevin?
Of the artistic kind.
Yeah. Can we go back to that question of what kind of medical office uses would be permitted? And so
Yes.
if hospital is excluded, could there still be medical offices with like a small?
Yeah,
surgical
so a hospital or a nursing home, as defined in the back, which is more of a regional-type facility with emergency services and things like that. Anything else would be covered under office, personal service, retail, anything like
did notice-
medical offices or urgent care or any of that sort of thing would be allowed here.
When I read through, because I used to work in healthcare, and so one of the things I noticed in the special limitations is there's a 100-foot setback involved with healthcare, or with hospital or healthcare uses. And I'd be concerned that that was an attempt to limit or prevent development of a non-desired use at some time in the past, because there are a lot of lots that don't have 100-foot setbacks.
Yeah.
And so I would look at that to see if that prohibits, that clause prohibits any hospital from ever, or any intensive healthcare use that uses procedures and other things that isn't just a general practice type of office from occupying here, because people have to drive a long way to get their health care.
No, I think that's the
generally.
biggest lacking in the city is healthcare activities.
So two questions there. One goes back to the gas stations. By what you said before, does that necessarily mean that, for example, the gas stations right now on Main Street, if they were to go away, they can't then be reinstated
They're
as
not,
gas
they're
stations?
not allowed in
That's
the
what I
linkage
thought.
district or
Yeah.
anywhere in the sort of Main Street corridor
And then
under the
again,
current zoning.
there's nothing about our other zoning in other areas and other parts of the city where allowable that would preclude the building of a hospital. It's just that
Yeah.
the
They're-
current
they're-
environment isn't such that,
Particularly, I mean, you would essentially need 50 acres or
Yeah.
something large, and that's only going to happen in the residential district. And even then, there's a very limited number of
Or-
chances for that.
or like an old defunct correctional facility.
Yeah. If they keep
I wonder if we have one of
legalizing
those.
drugs, that prison may come up for sale.
Yeah, it's a beautiful old building.
Yeah, well, there's a
Adaptive
lot of
reuse.
land around the prison that the prison can still go on and you
Sure.
could use for a hospital or some other.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the school got put up there, big plate stuff needs lots of land.
Yeah. So there isn't necessarily a deterrent in our zoning from
No, there-
healthcare facility.
No.
Yeah, so,
I'm sure if a hospital wanted to come in, people would jump up and down to change zoning to make it work.
yeah.
But there's not a lot of parcels left that are large enough to handle a large-scale hospital.
Yeah.
And hospitals are closing, they're not being built very many
No,
places.
That's not true. What's happening is they're consolidating, so they're building outpatient feeder facilities for the chains. Westchester and other ones are building regional, smaller, mid-sized things that will then pass hospitals down to their medical centers. So there's still a lot of medical construction happening.
Medical construction, yeah, I mean, hospitals, though, are sometimes going out of business and being consolidated with bigger ones nearby.
Yeah. So this is a lot to consider, right? So
Yes.
knowing that it's the start of the process, there will be further opportunity for us to share our input, right?
Yes, and just so you can see, and I know we're out of time, but I've already made a lot of changes to in red, if you can see as I scroll down, based on the CAC's comments and the city council comments. So
Yeah.
it's very much in flux, and if, the planning board as a group or even individual members want
Yeah.
to voice their concerns, they can perhaps get in on the ground floor of
Yeah.
whatever happens.
To that end, are you able to make your work product here available to the group.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so in doing so, then that's the invitation to share whatever detailed thoughts and comments you have, and maybe we do that over the next month. And you'll see where we're at in compiling them so that we have something comprehensive and thoughtful to share back to the city council. Do you know the timeline on this? Do they have
no, but I think they're under some sense of, we better do this sooner rather than later,
Yeah.
because the vacant land is starting to attract interest of people who may not have high design standards in mind.
Ooh, we don't want those. They're coming in with their chain link fence.
I want to urge caution about the sense of urgency that's driven by people with a commercial interest. Let me just put it that way.
It's, anyway, we have to, thank you, Kevin. We have to move on. Thank you, John.
Okay?